Morning everyone, welcome back to the shed. I thought I'd give you a little update on yesterday's video. For those of you who watched it, you'll have seen my initial thoughts on Kitty Hawk's new Su-17 fitter. Yesterday afternoon, after uploading the video, I started to do a little bit of work on this thing and try and distill some of the ideas down that I'd offered to you guys when I filmed it yesterday morning. One of those things was I suggested that the best approach to this kit was to assemble all of the fuselage parts together before you did anything else. So I thought I'd give that a go, and this is what I came up with. These are the two fuselage halves, as you can see, that now fit together. They comprise three main sections. Front, a centre section that holds most of the wing, and then a rear engine section, onto which are added spinal sections, front, a middle section that wraps over, and then an optional rear part that goes at the base of the fin. The reason for the optional part, as I mentioned in the video yesterday, is that the versions that are offered in the kit differ in detail. One of those details is a ram air turbine, a ram air intake rather, that goes into the base of the fin. So what I did was I decided that I would glue all of the main sections together and then add the spinal parts and also the fin, in order to give me what was essentially a pretty traditional full-length fuselage half, this part. As it turned out, that proved to be easier than I expected. There were slight issues, and that meant that certain areas along the joints needed to be smoothed slightly. I used one of these. This is a standard kind of hard sanding stick, and all I did was I just put the parts onto the desk and then created a vertical kind of joint against the edge of the plastic part and just simply rubbed it smooth, and then that way when I brought the two halves together I'd got a perfectly kind of vertical line which I could combine and then add glue to. The fit of the parts across this was really pretty good actually. I found that there was some slight flex, so what that meant was that the front half, this piece here, if I turn it around, this piece here was slightly deeper than the adjoining piece. All that meant was that I glued the top half, let it dry, and then using a clothes peg I just held the bottom half together like that, and then ran a bead of glue and then let that set. And then inside the part I reinforced it with evergreen strip, which you can kind of see in there. Nothing very difficult. I found that I could get these two main fuselage sections together within around about half an hour. So once I had those two together, then I added the spine parts and also the fin sections. Glued all of those together. They're solid now. To glue this together I used this, which is Tamiya extra thin cement. This is the quick setting version, and I used this right across the board and found that it set the parts really within an hour, and then I could kind of move on to other things. Some filling will be needed around this, as I suspected it would be, to be honest. Filling isn't needed on the vertical joints that run the circumference of the fuselage, but they are needed around the joints between the spinal sections and the top of the fuselage. That's nothing spectacular though. It's in some cases it'll need a little more than a bead of Mr. Surfacer, run along that, let that set, sand it off. Some areas here, there are tab and kind of socket joints for the spinal parts, and those have kind of become apparent as the two sections have dried out overnight. I've noticed them, they've sort of shrunk and revealed the holes. So all I'll do is I'll just use some standard filler, cocktail stick, run the filler along the joint, let it set, and then sand it smooth. I'm going to do all of that work before I start sticking anything into this thing. That way I don't destroy any of the internal sections, especially those painted parts, with any sanding that isn't really necessary. Then once it goes together, with a bit of luck, there should be no need for too much in the way of kind of additional filling. There may well be underneath. I noticed when I glued it together yesterday, there was a slight kind of mismatch along this edge, but all I'll do there is that I'll start gluing it at one end and then work my way through and then hold it in place until that part of the glue sets, and then work my way along, and then once it's dry I'll sand it smooth. Fit so far has been really good on this, I have to say. I've been working on this now for a couple of hours and found that overall the parts have quite close tolerance to their neighbours, which is really, really good. I also mentioned in the video as well that that the underside of the model, this section here, was more curved than it should be. Having got this built, I think that probably is the case. The top section seems okay, but underneath there is definitely more of a pronounced kind of undercut, if you like, than the perhaps should be. I had a message sent to me last night with ideas as to how to go about correcting that, which involved slicing along a panel line here and then putting plastic card into there and forcing that open, and then which in essence pushes the floor further down and straightens out the line. Though that's not that difficult to do, I'm not sure that I'm going to bother, to be honest. I think I'm going to leave it alone and just show the readers exactly what it looks like from the box, rather than messing around correcting this. It's a fine line. Maybe I should show the readers what to do there, but I think in this case I'm gonna kind of move on from that. One thing that I'm not necessarily going to move away from is the idea that I'm going to put a blanking plate over the nose cone. One thing that I will do though, I think, I found a number of photographs of these blanking plates on aircraft such as the Fitter, some of which are simply circular sections with holes in that get pushed over the top of the kind of the bullet, if you like, and revealing the tip of the cone. But others I've seen are circular plates with actually a stamped metal cover for the nose cone, so that the whole thing is covered over, so you can't see any of the interior at all. So what I think I'm going to do, to save myself having to cut that central section out to allow the nose cone to come through, which in turn means that I've got to make sure that that nose cone is perfectly centered, is that I think I'm just going to cut the tip of the nose cone off, cut a circular disc, and then glue the tip of the nose cone to that disc, and then paint the whole thing red and then push it into place, which hints at the idea that it's a proper cover. I think that will be a much simpler way of dealing with that interior section, and that's what I'm going to do on this model, I think. I noticed on the kit parts that the actual tip of the bullet is defined on the part, so I think what I can do is I can mark that with a pencil and then use a razor saw and cut it off, sand it smooth, and then just drop it centrally onto a piece of plastic card. While I've got these runners in my hand, the one frustration that I've noticed so far, and it's kind of a frustration with a lot of kits, is that the parts are displaced over all of the runners. There seems to be no logic to where the designers have put each individual piece. Although one of them, this one here, contains most of the wing parts, superficial details such as the liners that go inside the wheelbase and also the gun bay that I mentioned yesterday are spread out over the others. So you have C parts that go in there and D parts that go in there. There seems to be kind of no logic towards it. I really wish kit designers, if possible, could cluster the parts together that are needed for certain things. If you buy a Tamiya kit, engine parts tend to be on 2 runners, whereas with this they're kind of spread out everywhere. So it's a little bit of a frustration, but I guess it's one of those kind of first world problems that we all have. the other thing that I did last night, is I built the engine. The engine in this model is absolutely invisible. Once you fit it into place and it's held in place by some large peg and socket joints, the only thing that you can see is the back of the jet pipe. You can't see anything else. You can see the detail kind of like that when it's in there, but you cannot see anything else. It's a kind of a waste to even bother being careful with construction on this part. I certainly didn't. I just clipped off the pieces, smoothed out the mating surfaces and bodged it together, and then made sure that the rear of the jet pipe was nice and neat and tidy, because that's the only thing that can be seen. You can't even really see the front face of the turbine, because when everything's in there, the cockpit blanks everything off, so there's nothing to be seen and kind of nothing to be gained from worrying about that. So the engine at the moment is essentially 2/3 complete, but that's all it's going to be. And the only thing that I'm going to paint, I'm not even going to bother painting the front face, because you won't see that. All I'm going to paint is the jet pipe and the inside of the pipe, and then leave it at that, I think. So if you are building this kit, I wouldn't worry about this unless you're of the mind of well, I know it's in there, so I'm going to paint that and it'll be fun to do, which is perfectly fine. If you're not bothered about that, just ignore it. So far, so good on this thing. I wasn't planning really to do a kind of a rolling conversation about the kit, but I think if I can do maybe 5 or 10 minutes each time I work on it, maybe it'll give you an idea of how it goes together. As it is, the issues that I mentioned yesterday have certainly come to the fore a little bit. They're things that I expected have happened, things that I assumed would be okay, most definitely have been. There is a logic to the way you approach this kit, and at the moment I think that's the way that it is being done. I'm not suggesting for a single second it's the only way to build this kit, but kind of logic and experience has kind of shown me that if you can simplify things early on, then you're not going to be chasing your tail later on in the project. So the rest of today will be taken up with building the remainder of the wings, those sections, so that they're all done. One of the things that I will do on here, and one of the things I was really impressed by actually, is that the sweeping part of the wings, these sections here, are not moulded in two halves, they're moulded as one single solid part. And from what I can see on these, there's kind of no sink marks on them either. They're really well moulded. And given how thick the parts are, I think that's a really impressive thing. Now what they've got in each wing to combine with pegs that are moulded inside the fixed portion are some holes, so that basically you trap this piece between the two halves of the fixed part of the wing. What I'm going to do, I think, is I'm actually going to cut out a V shape into this hole, and that way I can build the wings, I can paint them all, add all of the control surfaces, weather those separately, and then simply slot them onto the pegs once the model's finished. I think that'll make life a lot easier, it'll make it a little bit less cumbersome, and it'll also make it a little bit less fragile when it comes to me working on what I think will be some masking for the camouflage scheme. So yeah, so far so good. So I hope you've enjoyed just seeing this little 10-minute roundup this morning of the building of this kit. How long this is going to take to build, I'm not entirely sure, because I'm away next week, but hopefully I'll have something to show you within the next couple of weeks. I mentioned yesterday that I'm planning to put this into the next issue. The next issue that will be available for this will be June's, so I'll be working on getting it into the June issue. So hopefully before the end of next month I'll have something to show you. In the meantime, have a great day. I hope you enjoy the rest of Tuesday, and I'll see you again soon. Cheers, bye.